Okay, I ain't finna be on this mud too long. We're trying to find new ways to have my hair situated. Why y'all ain't tell me people with locks got to deal with this? The hair getting down now. I don't know if that's from the beard or what. I got fucking a kid the other day called me fucking pineapple head. Might have to start editing videos and be like, with the pineapple right there. You pineapple head? Kid, I love kids. They're so fucking blunt, bro. Pineapple head. I haven't ever had a retwist. I tried to do my own retwist. It was not a retwist. It's like I twist it, then I try to put rubber bands at the end. It didn't go as planned. Do I need to? No. It's not really doing what I wanted to do. Let's give an honor to Source, to the Most High, the Creator, for making all this possible. You could have been anywhere. You could have been anywhere, but you're here with me. Okay, let me see. Ooh, that might work. But anyway, give gratitude. I'm gonna jump right into this. Oh, that might be a whole lot better. Fuck. Hey, you gotta have fun with life, bro. Life is fucking funny to me. I'll tell you one thing I do love is styling my hair though. I've had braids like when I was young, but locks, this is interesting. The patience. Oh, my arms are so fucking sore. Anywho, let's give an honor to the ancestors, known for the highest good of all. Y'all bear with me. I really be wanting this shit to stand up. It be doing its own thing sometimes. But yeah, so I don't think this is talked about enough. If you've been following my journey, it's been an interesting journey. Oh, okay, I like that. Okay, we getting somewhere. So if you've been following my journey, healing journey, spiritual journey, enlightened journey, life experience, whatever. We here, we tend to lock in, dive into ourselves, learn more about ourselves, and I'm just kind of giving you like a more so update. Not so much that, but I'm just, where is that trash can at? Okay, let me see if I can make this. Indeed. So yeah, I don't think this is discussed enough, but y'all have heard me talk about the mother womb. I'm realizing now the importance of like how the father womb is peaking so much. How much one can really hold in a lot of like rage when it comes to the father womb. For me, I've had a lot of rage come up for things I did not know, and I've had to really dive deep into myself and forgive myself for what I did not know, for being somewhere too long. I had to forgive myself for staying connected to people who are not so much good or bad people at heart, but just did not reflect my core values or did not respect and honor themselves and so forth. So with that, that's been a huge thing for me, to where it's been very challenging, bro, to try to connect with people who you just simply don't connect with. And it's not that you aren't interconnected, but it's like there's no depth to it. This father wound has been peaking for me because I really like to express, like, for a lot of men who do follow me, for a lot of men who will come on board, younger men and so forth, that will deal with this mental entrapment, or this almost like arrested development thing that I talked about before, when you can seem imprisoned to whatever trauma. So for me, I was like, bro, like, what has really been coming up for me is abandonment wounds. And abandonment wounds, I need some chapstick, because this abandonment wound around my father is, again, had a lot of rage coming up because I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know what to do. And when you're dealing with a father wound, if you don't know, I would say it's much different than the mother wound. It can have some type of similarities to it, but the father wound for itself is like, as a man or as for a woman, but as a man, when you never really truly had that person that reflect or mirror back or guided you to see some type of demonstration or reenactment or just this holistic or healthy or just consistency through someone else that upholds this father figure stature or just this confidence. You know, a lot of things that I can go into, how you think about yourself, how you perceive yourself, no matter how someone else perceives you. So for me, it's like, whoa, it's been the abandonment wound that I've slowly progressed through, and through the uncomfortability of that, I've recognized, like, man, this is something like that is very huge that I have to discuss, especially with a lot of younger men who don't know the importance of emotional security, emotional intelligence. And it's much more than that. It's the fact of how your life may not look like mine, how your experience may not look like mine, but the focus so much on, you know, as I've spoken before, the overhaul and working and seeing generations that did things completely different than me. And I slowly start to accept more that what's the biggest challenges for me is, like, I've been wanting to reach out to my father or to the man who came together, because this is how I perceive it, to meet my mom and so forth, and gradually just starting to pick apart and dissect every part of, like, her story, his story, and so forth. And then realizing, like, there comes a point in your life, like, what family do I protect first? What do I prioritize first? Not just as a man, but as a father, and then this inner child aspect. So the little boy never leaves you, correct? So for me, that's that abandonment wound, to where I have to decide where, as much as I want to build with this man, I don't think it's talked about enough, to where I don't know fucking how. I don't know how. And the reason I say that is, like, this is where I used to be. I was talking to my therapist, and she mentioned how, like, do you realize, like, how hard you've been on yourself? And I was like, I don't think a lot of people realize, like, how hard men are on themselves. And the reason I say this is just a perspective, or from my perspective, from women who don't know what's really going on with us when we're silent. And because of how a world that has enabled the distorted mother rather than a healthy mother, or rather than a mother who is very supportive towards the vision of her son, or the vision of, even when her son grows into fatherhood, that support that's still valuable, that most people probably do have, is like, that's still important, that you have a mother and father there. By me not having that option, that leaves me with what a lot of people can relate to. Is almost like this void that you're trying to fill unconsciously, and then subconsciously there's this deep programming or subconscious fear around either being alone or being overly secluded or isolated from the world. And it's even a balance in that, because I'm sitting here trying to figure out, like, bro, like, how do I navigate through life? Sometimes I have to give myself gratitude, because I'm like, yo, how did I even get this far? How did I even get this far? So the beauty of it is again to give y'all greetings into my world and my universe, and just as a perspective from a man, a darker man, a man that has come into his own manhood, but still doesn't forget about the childhood, the childhood that's just as vital as the adulthood. So for me, I've been recognizing the fact of, like, for men, when you see how the world caters naturally to supporting women in whatever way. And the reason I mention that is when you look at just the homelessness rate and who's affected more when it comes to homelessness, the certain systems that are crumbling to actually usher in and bring forth more humility or compassion for not only individually ourselves, but for each other. You know, the same men, you know, I've talked about before that when you didn't have mothers who were protected young, that when they were little girls and they don't know unconsciously that they hold on to, or they have these unconscious patterns or behavior patterns that they develop because of the resentment that has nothing to do with their spouse, but has or their son, but has everything to do with what they dealt with individually, you know, from their childhood development. And it's not always the case, but still, even when some women get into adulthood where they've dealt with certain men with traumas who they were not prepared for. So imagine not having a father preparing you for said men. Like, honestly, I can use myself. If I had to be blatantly honest and truthful, I've told my partner countless times to where when you look at situations and when you're able to see yourself, most importantly, and then be able to see the bigger picture instead of pointing the finger, you'll be able to see like, wow, I wish I had known more, but I'm glad I went through this because I would have protected myself from you. And, or more so, I would have actually had, you know, wanted you to protect yourself from me because of, again, that's how certain things karmically, you know, lessons, great things happen because you are called to connect or you are called to come into something. And when you just assume that it's supposed to be a certain way or, you know, unicorns and, you know, all types of, you know, just harmonious things. In actuality, I realized like I had to go through this. I had to be fatherless to father myself. I had to be motherless to mother myself, or to even meet women who have met themselves, who have mothered themselves, or women who are in the process of doing that. So a lot of grace comes in where I'm expressing when I say this is just from the depths of who I am through my own transformation, through my own experience of a world as a man where I just naturally see how even through certain situations, like it's natural for women, some women as mothers, to speak to the mother, to the children, or go directly to the child. And it's so much that has been catered to that, and naturally, you know, more so pushing the man to the back burner, pushing, you know, him as an individual to the wayside because, again, if its value or how the value of a man has been displayed just from what we see in the world, if his status isn't something like this or how much money he makes and, you know, things like that, rather than the man who's really in depth with himself, who truly, as women start to learn more about themselves, realizing that emotional connection is just as vital, that spiritual connection, or even the fact of, does this person love themselves? Do they know themselves and so forth? How is their well-being? Do they prioritize the emotional, spiritual, and physical? Because as you connect with people, you're realizing this is not only just a spouse, a partner, a significant other. This is your caretaker, because as you, and I just mean as a caretaker how you see the world, but this is someone who's taking care of your health, who you're putting in this interaction and exchange, you're putting in that energy exchange, or even in that dynamic, you're placing yourself in the care of that individual. Now, ask me, did I grow up around shit like that? No, because when I'm telling myself that this father wound has illuminated that. If I've never seen men truly know how to take care of themselves, and or women, if I never seen women know how to take care of themselves and or, you know, their kids, dang, isn't that fucking deep? I want y'all to ponder on that. For a lot of us, we and I don't mean we didn't have mamas that, you know, and I mean by the fact of not them just housing us. That's a different thing. I'm talking about, did you have an experience with someone who housed your emotions, who made sure were they safe for themselves, and was that house safe for you? Was a house, did they create a house safe for your emotions? You know how much, and what I say about that is like, as in guiding you, that they reminded you as a guide in your life. You can say a teacher or whatever. Were there seeds planted to where your mother or father knew that you would be influenced by the world, but what I planted within you as a guide, as a guardian, those seeds, you will see the difference between this influence giving you fruit that doesn't prosper, so you learn from that. But then me planting seeds for you that is just, it's going to flourish over time. You're going to be able to use this and replant it. You're going to be able to use these seeds, these lessons, this knowledge, and apply it to your life. Therefore, this is why it's so vital how we as guardians, those who are diving deep and doing the shadow work and learning themselves and being transformed through their experience and growing inwardly and so forth, you realize, like, as you're doing that, you're not only weeding out what doesn't stabilize you in your garden of life, your experience, and so forth, but you'll also be able to take up that which, at the end of that experience, at the end of that that season, where this person may expire or something was exposed. That exposure is a representation of someone exposing themselves as a weed in your garden, where you have to let go, where you have to remove. That expiration could be a representation of people who have served their purpose in that season. And with that, again, sharing this and then teaching children, like, the importance of people will expire in your life. That's seasonal. People will expose themselves, sharing to our children that there is no attachment to this so-called life. This is where the importance of gratitude comes in. So again, I'm realizing the importance of how the system exposes itself, so I can realize that it has expired for me. Certain people who hold on to things systematically, where I realize, like, when I say outdated, it's expired. When I say certain things that certain people had to expose themselves, I needed to see that. I deserve to see that. So I know now what not to hold on to, because it's rotten. It no longer serves me. You're not going to just eat rotten fruit, correct? So now, the importance of all this is, like, I'm recognizing in my journey, like, this father wound that's showing itself is, I was telling a young man the other day, well, he's actually my elder, but I was expressing to him, and this is why knowledge is so infinite, or just, experience in itself is such a beautiful thing, is because you can be talking to someone who's 40, I believe he was 40, and have 5 children, and I only have 2, but you're still learning from each other. He wanted to tell me, like, his experience of, and this is just, again, from me observing from my lens, and not absorbing, and I'm going to show the difference. He was, we got into the discussion of, like, trying to create something dealing with, kids and coaching and some stuff. And somehow we got on the father, because he had brought up, like, trying to do these things, and especially just as a man that is of a darker shade, when it seems like all the odds are stacked up against you, especially when you're just trying to create and build, even when you see most of people who mask and their mask is falling off, and a lot of your message probably won't really, it'll reach them, maybe triggering, but it won't, sometimes it doesn't have an effect until months, years, and so forth. Even when you're probably not here, it's to each their own. There's nothing I can really do about that. Other than that, that's the persistence and consistency that you have to have. So with that, we got on talking about, he brought up something about his father, and we got on the lines of realizing how much these exchanges are actually healing, and also realizing that your father wounds and mother wounds are still, how could I say this, like, still peaks, even in conversations, even in interactions, even in business and partnerships. Meaning that what is preventing you from going and expanding and being optimistic beyond what you're familiar with. For instance, he presented me again with the opportunity to do something with the children and so forth. So for me, I recognized like, okay, this is an opportunity for me like to connect deeper with my inner child, to have fun, and also be that healthy connection to the community or to someone else. Other than that, again, we start talking about he started talking about his father, how he wasn't there. Then he went into a story about something related to a barbershop, how I think they have the same barber. His dad, him and his dad had the same barber, and he was mentioning how the guy was like, yeah, man, your son play balls, and he was like, he never play basketball. He was like, he never seen him play. And I can tell a 40-year young, man, I can feel, those who are like an empath, or those, I'm just, in Western astrology, I'm looked at as a Scorpio, so I naturally feel, I can pick up on stuff. So, and I'm like, wow, let me just sit here. And I didn't realize through this exchange that you realize, like, as you're speaking up and talking about things authentically from experience or childhood, there's actually healing happening. And through this exchange is that we're allowing ourselves to be judge free, allowing ourselves to just have healthy dialogue without feeling like one should overpower each other. So with that, I want to let you know, as men and as younger men, especially darker men, there are men such as myself and other men out here who see you without the fact of how you dress, how much you're not viewed as whatever it is because of your status, because popularity in school. None of that matters, because as you get of age, you realize that that doesn't hold significance. That isn't substance. Your character is your character development, which will always happens until you get a certain age and so forth, until you leave this world. Integrity, morality, certain things that are deeper to where you'll never stop learning yourself. So in this exchange, I had told him, I was like, man, it's funny you mentioned that about your father, because I was sitting here contemplating on, it's almost like I can feel my father wanting me to reach out. And like I said before, sometimes I don't know how. The little boy in me wants that. But when you're healing and going through a journey, not just the little boy in me wants that. It's like an innocence. Like, you want your father. You want your family to, your family that you came through, the family that you grew up in. You want to experience certain things with people. This is so vital, is that you need to also be there for self. You need to show up. And this is where I realized, like, through human nature, through human experience, where disagreements come about, because we feel that due to a people-pleasing society where you have to feel like you have to show up for others rather than yourself for their praise. And this is where you see a lot of people with their mask falling, and through their career setting, celebrity status, or whatever level or whatever status it is, they have deep-rooted insecurities, and it's not secure in who they are. So this praise or this attention, whether it's social media and so forth, that they look for, literally starts from childhood. Literally somewhere along down the line they have been influenced or have been almost infiltrated by the fact of something wanting to convince them to believe that they actually need someone's validation or acceptance. And that's the difference between a want and a need. You can want someone to support you. We can want the world to see us as this innocent, whatever it is. But the importance of that is that you need to see that first. So when we were having this discussion, he was like, I was like, I wanted to talk to him. I wanted to call because I can feel it. And he was like, yeah, he kind of trying to like relate his story to mine. I could tell when people, again, because we don't realize we're projecting from our experience, like projecting out like a projector screen from our experience. That's why it's all perception at the end of the day. So as an observer, learning now to be more of an observer and not an absorber, meaning that someone who absorbs, I would have taken on and taken offense and be like, nah, man, gotta call that dude, whatever. You can't tell me what to do, because that's where it went to. I observed and listened to what the almost like the feeling of the vibration, or just the exchange, like, okay, let me listen, then let me collect from this like data, from this experience, instead of assuming like he's trying to tell me what to do and so forth. And with that, I'm realizing that actually what we were doing is shattering the illusion of the ego wanting to be seen, or the wounded ego, or just the false perception of masculinity, or coming from femininity. This false empowerment of like trying to overpower the conversation and so forth. And as him mentioning that, he was like, "Yeah, man, you probably should call him, because the kids and your kids and stuff like that, and why they're still here." And I get that. I listened. I didn't judge, but I was more the observer, because I always remind people, you don't know people's backstory. We don't know what people have went through. I can honestly say that by being so hard on myself, I used to judge myself so much by how I did this, how I showed up. This has to be a certain way and so forth, because we come from, in a capitalism or controlling manipulative society, and the foundations that are crumbling, we're coming from so much of elders or generations that they gave off this false empowerment to want to control the narrative so much through their warlike tactics, their violence, and so forth. Even experience where I did not know the importance of where true power lies. And it ain't not just within yourself. It's the importance of allowing things to happen and realizing that what and who is really in control of what. And more so, it's the response. And so for me, as him saying that, I had to remind him, like, it's all perspective, and I appreciate that. It's more expressing to him, like, when you had a father, and now that you are a father or a man, and you're making the effort to be there for your children, you chose to stay away. And this is the thing about healing, it's like, and it's more than just choosing to stay, it's choosing to fucking heal. When you're choosing to heal, whether you choose to stay in a dynamic with the mother of your children, whether you choose to co-parent or co-guardianship or whatever, it's still the importance that it doesn't matter if you're together or not. There's still healing that has to be done, because there's still cycles. I had to recognize a cycle to where I had a father that, when I got his story, he told me how he, why he made the decision he did. I honor and respect that. Other than having, a woman, me learning the mother wound with my mom, that emotional abandonment wound, which is different than that abandoned physically. What happens is, and how that could look different, is that you're still trying to search for, when the emotional abandonment, when you're still trying to seek and search for that security, or have no type of guidance, intuitively or emotionally, to where you're not knowing how to navigate those emotions, or this, as I said before, with enmeshment relationships that you develop as you grow, or even unhealthy attachments. One moment. Okay, unhealthy attachments that we don't realize that we're reenacting through certain interactions or connections, whether it be through self-sabotaging behavior patterns, or not having, basically those self-sabotaging behavior patterns has a lot to do with no sense of security within self. So a lot of when we're trying to overgive, overcompensate, whether that be emotionally for an individual, whether that be financially, a lot of that stems from, again, the balance between man and woman, or even just the fact of the feminine and masculine principle. Or it's said to be from a great teacher, Bobby Hemmett, all things are feminine. I can see that relation, and I can also see how things have changed into masculinity. But I can also see how, again, whomever and how that came about, to each their own. But again, the importance of the feminine energy and how it's ever changing. Some can see it as masculine, and some can see it as just the feminine being shapeless and formless and, ever evolving. I can see that. I can see that. Like the importance of even how water in itself still creates that from that feminine, what is it? Feminine, just the representation of what water and how many shapes, not even shapes, but how could I say this? Like how it can create and also destroy so much. Even in its destruction, it's still creating, if that makes sense. So it's like that feminine aspect of, or ways of how it's always changing, but at the same moment, or shifting or evolving, but not really taking form, or if that makes sense. Because that's gonna be a whole other topic. Because I don't want to go off on a tangent. But anywho, so for me, through that whole exchange, I had to realize how this conversation with the brother, like how is this changing, and or what do I need to receive from this? And so with that, see, that's why I didn't want to go off a tangent, because I was almost like forgetting about what the fuck I was saying. So again, where was I going with this? So yeah, through that exchange, as he was breaking up those father wounds and stuff, or as I tell you that it's peaking, that's what it was at. That's what I was coming to. That balance, or just seeing that the masculine figure or the feminine figure or whatever because let me not say that. Seeing that man or woman that persists or consists in your life, because man and woman can have, some may say more feminine and masculine energy. But the importance of, that's where I was getting at, that mother reminding you of that inner identity, and how a lot of us have lost sight of that, and now regaining that and restoring that. And so through that, you're developing a whole different identity. You're developing a whole different persona. You will develop and unravel parts of you and start to realize these mother lovers did not even fucking know me. Because as I'm starting to know me, I realize they don't know me at all. And this is where it's for me, it's so challenging to try to relate to people, because I'm realizing they either haven't met themselves to the depths, or I'm starting to, even through the exchange with the brother, realize as I start to accept my father wound more and more, I start to realize that it's becoming a scar. And a scar reminds you that you don't forget. Scars don't fade. Remember that. So you can forgive, but I was telling myself, it's not something that I have to carry into my new life, my new journey. It's something I can unpack now. And that's what I'm doing when I have these exchanges with people. It's I'm unpacking the fact of, do I have to keep telling myself this story? But then I have to remind myself, and being present and moving forward, that I'm rewriting the narrative, of a man who chose not to be in their children's life. So for me, it can be painful, but does it have to stay that way? No. Because that abandonment wound reminds me that I too am capable of stepping into my own power, and then healing allows me to regain that power of to be empowered to step into fatherhood. Even though I didn't have at that moment that support, I have all the support now, whether within myself, and seeing that when I do have men in my life that are supportive, when I do have people in my life that show up as that father energy, and then accepting that the deep acceptance for a lot of us as men is that a lot of us also going through life with resentment and that rage of It's a day-to-day process, young men and fathers and men and so forth, outside of religion, outside of other stuff, that your day-to-day process, no matter what resurfaces through repressed emotion or suppressed emotions, that you won't ever have that biological father. Like, I had to accept this daily, that I won't ever have that biological father that I wish I had growing up. And I'm not angry with that. I've gotten to a place where I realized through my mistakes, or through my navigating through life, I wish I had it. But at the same time, the persistence of me showing up for myself, the consistency of me focusing on my journey, my healing journey, and then not it trying to be perfect, because what is? Because why would I assume that it's perfect or even try to mask the shit when I know that through my acceptance of knowing that I did not have someone there to show me things in a healthy way, I'm able to be discerning now, even with people, I'm not even going to call their names and so forth, but I'm able to be very discerning through the vetting process of who I allow into my space, and even what certain, I do it daily. Like, there's certain men I just don't associate with. I will not. Simply because, and this is just great, simply because I just know where they are mentally, I know where they are emotionally and so forth. And when I look at the fact of, if I'm stepping into this power of acknowledging my, not just manhood, but the importance of childhood and all those things, adulthood, fatherhood, all those things consistent in one, I have to also realize, like, where are these men core values? And I don't give a fuck if it's somebody of high stat, what they call of certain status or money and so forth. None of that shit matters to me anyway, because I've seen what has been allowed and what has unfolded here. And as in recognizing who reflects that distorted mother reflects in men. That insecurity, that shit reflects in men of certain status. That also reflects in women who enable those men. The women, the distorted matriarchal who enable this and supports this distorted patriarchal. So why would I not look at that as something like that's important, not just for me, but being a bridge for my son? You know, to be able to see his father navigate these wounds, these internal wounds that he don't see, that sometimes I fucking project onto him, her, my daughter, and her mother, and other people, not knowing the effects of it until I realize, like, wow, even when you're not doing something or you don't aware of it, it still affects people. So imagine, even when people proclaim to be people upset, you know, have these riches and so forth, even if you think you're not doing something, there are people who see and watch, and seeing you're not doing something in moments of crisis, and you know where you can be supportive, and you fear because of your own insecurities. Because this is why I tell people, due to the distortion of the fear of their illusion being shattered, their false foundations of empowerment, because they don't want to see others empowered, because they're so consumed by their power, always backfires. Because I always tell people, you have the opportunity to give to the people, because due to the interconnectedness, or due to the fact of, like, entrusting yourself and know what you're connected to, there's nothing that can harm you that you don't really see coming, especially if you're living in alignment. So I'm not surprised what comes to people who really are not living in alignment, when they know they have the opportunity, just as the opportunity was given to them to be in said position. They're given the opportunity to support, just as a child would, or just as a father would. A lot of people, y'all don't realize, y'all are still reflections of father and mother energy, no matter what your status is. And it ain't got shit to do with just what you're giving. That's natural. Y'all have gotten away from that, and I get it. where you develop this false identity or around false empowerment. And that's why you're going to continue to see the fall of false empowerment around influencing. That's why you're seeing so much exposed, and through that exposure of what systems were created on, they're going to fucking expire. They've already expired. They're outdated. The end of times is like the time of expiration. Time is up. And that's the expiration even on, when you look at the mother womb, divine intervention, the mother womb in itself has reached a point to where, mother and father womb, to where this is why some of us are here. Where that wounding is for us to allow ourselves to stitch up the shit. And when we're stitching up this shit, when you're having people trying to distract you, because as you're stitching and stitching yourself, you know, healing yourself, and in that stitching up things, you have to recognize, or you will come to that awareness. You know, I send prayers, or, you know, love to those who, for clarity in these moments, self-realizations, to realize, like, sometimes we're in connections or have been in things where we're trying to stitch up shit. You know, tie up loose ends is what they call, because when you stitch up something, you know you got to tie it at the end. Those who know, I've had stitches before. You have to tie knots and stuff, because if you don't, it'll fall right out. But in due time, it eventually falls out regardless. But that's the beauty of, that's the thing about healing. If you ever had stitches, or if you don't, look it up. But I've had stitches to where that shit is very uncomfortable. I had stitches in my lip when I was young. That's how my tooth got like this. I love myself, so it don't matter. Cause I don't know if I told this story. My cousin, like, we used to play the little jump rope game. Someone be in the middle, and we had, you know, back in the day, they had them hard ass jump ropes at the end. Was like, I don't know, felt like a rock or hard plastic. And we used to turn them. We used to spin in a circle, and we used to jump over. So I remember when I was a child, my cousin, this wasn't paying attention, spin the jump rope around, and boom, hit me in the mouth, knocked my tooth back. Right here, knocked my tooth back, busted my lip. And then I had to go to the hospital, of course, to get stitches. And the reason I'm bringing up this is just an analogy of life. When life, like divine intervention, whether it be like a car wreck, or, you know, some may call it an accident. I don't see it as that, perceive it as that. I see it as divine intervention. Health or something, you know, blockages in the body, a lot of things. That's divine intervention for you, whether energetic block, people who know about Reiki, who do energy work, spiritual warfare. A lot of stuff is showing you to sit down, rest, see things for what it is, stop assuming, blah, blah, blah. Keep going on. I can go on and on. Well, I actually need to say what it is. Spiritual warfare, spiritual attacks, a lot of things to where you're being told to sit, relax, you know, breathe, meditate, be still, and so forth. And as in doing that, divine intervention, this is where you have to learn, like, when your mind changes, you realize, like, this is intervention. This is something that allows me to see something that most won't see, but it's something only me and Source, the Creator, can see. So that divine intervention for me was realizing, again, the stitches that I went and got, they went in there, stitched it up, and so forth, because it was open. My lip was open. And even through that comfortability, those who know, that shit start to itch, because it can't stay in there. And they fall out either on their own, or sometimes, you know, as kids, we pick it. Because it's, you know, anything in the mouth, because of the moisture, heals completely different. Okay, that was deep. Okay, I just need to say that every wound heals differently. That's gonna be the title of this. That was, now when I was talking about divine intervention, that was some fucking divine clarity, self-realization right there. Imagine a wound here, but then having a wound here, ancestrally. Something so deep to where it's like only you and Source can see it. And that's why I feel like we're dealing with, not only individually, but collectively, before we pass judgment. I had to also realize, like, wow, some of these women have wounds I don't know the depths of. some of these men, some of these young men and young women have wounds I don't know the depths of. And I was driving today coming here, and I asked myself, I was like, why the fuck do I have this savior complex? Because that's been one thing due to my abandonment wound, or due to certain things, just due to my internal wounds. I realized like that's something I let go of, as in forgiving myself and realizing like I forgive myself for what I did not know and staying too long. That's one thing that try to come and reoccur in my mind, is that savior complex, to where like you'll come into something, you know, those who are on a journey of healing or spiritual enlightenment, whatever you want to call it. If you're called to this, you will immediately think like, you got to tell everybody, this. But that experience in itself, to each their own, however you go through it, you never stop getting to know yourself. And with that is recognizing that who can you save? You know, when it comes to the fact of, I even thought it's something like, again, when you look at healing in itself, no one knows the depths of your wound. No one knows the depths of what I dealt with my father, his absence, and how deep that goes for me, and how day to day I have to master up the courage to sometimes either surrender, and even times saying like, I'm tired of this father shit. I've told my partner, I've told myself like, I don't know what the fuck to do. I don't, you know, saying something like, I didn't even want to, you know, it was something real deep, and this is just honesty. I didn't even want to, I wanted a family, but it's wild how, again, I told you the wants and needs. I wanted so much deeply that healthy and holistic family, harmonious. And people don't realize, once you're going through healing, you're breaking cycles to fucking have that harmonious, healthy, abundant, prosperous tribe or lineage. That's what most people don't realize, how deep this shit goes. When you're breaking cycles, generational patterns, bro, you're fighting every moment and every day not to revert, not to go back and tell myself, not this time. This sexual trauma's coming up, whatever it is, I don't have to go out here and spill my semen. I don't have to go out here and connect to this person, you know, certain addictions and so forth. It's not about being perfect. It's about keeping your fucking heart clean, cleaning your heart, and keeping your hands clean. And so with that, it's like, that shit is deep. When you talk about the wound, no wound heals the same. If you know anything about the mouth, moisture and stuff, that wound it's a longer duration because of the moisture. Now, when you're talking about having a cut or something like this, again, being exposed to certain things and other elements is much different. But that I parallel that, or that analogy, to the internal aspect. We're dealing with something on a deeper cosmic ancestral level that most people don't realize. Like, in this diving deeper into these deeper wounds about ourselves, it's going to naturally expel what no longer needs to be here, and then expand the horizon of what motherhood and fatherhood, you know, yin and yang, that feminine and masculine energy, you know, is going to expand and expound more onto depth. The more we learn ourselves more deeper, the more we can expand a world that relates and correlates, you know, to that core values of what individually and collectively that we know we deserve or desire. That's all it is. When you dealing with healing and wounding, there's a part of you that's this imposter syndrome. The imposter syndrome ain't just having to do with success. Imposter syndrome, for me, I had to realize, like, imposter syndrome can be like this identity, developing this identity around what it is to be a upstanding man or father, or, you know. But through that, I had to recognize the little boy who deserves that. The inner child that knows it's deserving of that. And then with that comes up the uncomfortable parts of myself where I'm like, what's keeping me from that? You know, these experiences, they come to shape and shift my perspective and my experience. That fear, subconscious fear of wanting to connect deeper with people, or, you know, slowly processing, or, you know, going at my own pace. I was telling my therapist, I said, when you really look at the bigger picture of a lot of this stuff, it has a lot to do with the fact of when we're taking back authority over our life, everything changes. When you look at the illusion of who's been in control and what has been in control, and people start to individually take back their power through whatever they experienced in their childhood, through the system preying on our childhood woundings and so forth, man, let me tell you, you start to take back full power over your, you take back that authority over your life, that sovereignty, that birthright of like, man, this motherfucker ain't gotta tell me what to do. I don't have to do this. And it's not in an revengeful way. No, it's like when doing an exchange with that man, he's like, man, you probably should do this. You're telling me I should. I don't have to, though. And with that can be looked at so many different ways, but still, you're not going to make me. The world, the old world narrative that you're seeing crumbling, induce fear into people. Do this or, life-threatening things. Or you see people now, just by them speaking, just by them being authentic, their lives can be threatened just because of their authenticity, just because they love themselves, wholeheartedly, or just they love the versions of themselves. I had to tell my therapist, I was like, at a time where I wanted to be hard on myself, and it seems like I was hard on other people, I was like, I had to realize that it was more important for me to rewrite the narrative. And if that pisses people off, so what? Because I realize, again, it exposes their false sense of empowerment, which is centered around control. Most likely, they didn't have no type of. Most likely, they were silenced, or when they were young, or most likely they were controlled or manipulated in ways that even when they don't even know they were. So, in my being me threatens their manhood, their womanhood, or their identity, or whatever it is they subscribe to. And what am I supposed to do? Not be me? Not be me who, since I've been a child, me? And so now that I'm restoring that, now that innocence and that joy, you're angry at me for being me? Well, fuck. So this is the beauty of also the healing for a lot of you. You're stitching up things in your lineage that only you, as in healing and facing things, you're taking back authority in your lineage. You're no longer letting the wound bleed on to your kids and other people. Fuck them. Because basically they're saying if you don't subscribe and be dysfunctional or do certain things or be what other people want you to be, they're basically saying, fuck you too. How are they not? Well, we're not going to support and accept you, or you're not welcome here doing the whatever man-made holidays or ritualistic shit. Well, guess what? And so what? Life has been even more amazing and balanced. And as you realize, as you remove yourself, you realize like you start to see yourself more, the perspective changes as a flower blossoming. And then you surround yourself with other people who choose to blossom in their perspective on life, not those who see you as a weed because they see their life, they don't see their value. So realize that every wound heals differently. And in that stitching, that divine intervention is stitching. The Most High is coming along, remind like, hey, this has happened because of this. Now, this can heal. Now, when this becomes a scar, that scar may not fade. I mean, that the scar doesn't fade. But you don't have to let this wound, you let this scar be a reminder of what you've experienced. But it doesn't have to define you. You redefine yourself. And some of us, it's just like a child. It's life. We keep going through the same shit. I see it no different as a relation. When you see a child go out there and you say don't do this and do that, they'll keep doing it. They'll do something differently. And it's no difference when I see the Most High see us all as like little children, bro. They ain't learned their lesson. Some people haven't learned their lesson, no matter how much they want to obtain, no matter how much power and so forth. It's all like almost like a polarity to realize, like, okay, I'm going to show you what isn't empowerment or the false sense of power. Now, you have the option of doing this, because that's what most people don't realize. Like, when you're going through journeys and shit, you still had an opportunity to wish something on a motherfucker. You still had an opportunity to put hands and foots on a motherfucker. You still had an opportunity to crash out. And that's normal. As a light, I think this is sensors. It's my time, the lights go down low. But anyway, that's what people, you still have the opportunity. But again, I'll probably make a part 2 to this. I want y'all to remember that all wounds heal differently. And sometimes, like, I realized, like, when the brother was bringing up that thing, I'm like, sometimes it is too late for people. And I'm recognizing this with people who probably going to cycle back in life. And, that can be a conversation held or whatever. But some things are a little too late. And where I'm getting at for a lot of you. Like, like what I'm saying. Like, hey, someone can step into your life and introduce you to a newer perspective, a newer love. And that, when I say love, I don't mean like in this romanticized shit. I mean like experiences teach you love about yourself. Experiences teach you how this person may have loved differently. There's still discipline in that. This person may have grew up with a balanced household. There's still discipline in something to where you still have to learn to show up for yourself and see the patterns of not even sabotaging that, because this person's perspective is going to be different on yours, and it's going to take a little different effort, a different experience, a different perspective. And so, yeah, that's why I mentioned how, like, the father wound, perfect timing, how the father wound and the mother wound could look different for people. And we don't know the depths of their healing. We don't know the depths of their wound. That's what society has been hiding, is that collectively there is a mother wound and collectively there is a father wound. Because when I see the representation of this, and I got to be real and raw, how can I say this? As much as people don't want to see men that are lighter shade or different shades as a father, how could I say this? Let me first say this. For some of us, our father wound and mother wound could look differently on a 3D aspect or like on the physical aspect. My mother wound started with a woman that was darker. But the spiritual aspect of that wound, the emotional aspect, still had an effect on all my connections. So it didn't matter what woman that I was with, the energy showed up within me, or it mirrored back something that I needed to face regarding that mother wound. Now, the father wound is different. When I hear people say the founding fathers, and then when I hear about stories or my experience of men that are darker and then men that are of lighter shade, the father wound looks different. My father wound is different, what I dealt with my, father physically not being there. Now, there are different woundings or different experiences that I've dealt with men who are lighter shade, who have their own internal insecurities and dealt with whatever it is they're dealing with. And they don't realize, like I'm telling you from experience, how they have through our exchange and experience, through their inability to connect deeper, a father wound collectively has been created, meaning there isn't a lot of mutual trust between darker men and men that are of, let's say, Irish, or let's say lighter shade, if you want to call it Caucasian. There isn't mutual trust, because when you see certain careers and certain settings where, a lot of us who have grown up in certain generations where you've seen men of lighter shade come into their so-called rich and wealth, and this is not all of them, but we know the climate of so-called America in this country. You see them come into their said power through the stepping on the necks or stepping on people on the way up, the false empowerment of that. So that being said, come on, throat. That being said, that in itself, when you talk about trust or security, that has a lot to do with not only what and how people have come into that, but also have you treated the women that we come from as well. So, I had to tell my partner, because, she can be classified, or you see someone, from people's perspective, they will say she's white, she's Caucasian, whatever. Now, does she have other nationality? Of course. And so forth. Within her, yes. That's a whole nother subject. But I had to come out and tell her, I was like, you're asking people, and this is through a passive aggressive behavior, through what has been experienced in this country, through many shades of people, whether there's people behind the scenes that are darker, that have supported people who are lighter shades. Again, the mother wound and the father wound reflects all of that. There are women that are darker that have supported the downfall, the certain things dealing with their own women. There are women that are lighter. Again, through people being passive aggressive. You doing that, again, has a lot to do with you don't really trust yourself. So there is no trust amongst people in humanity. There isn't nothing that has been persistent and consistent in even these structures that can say that we trust not only the people that sign the checks, that the monetary system, the government structure. There is no trust amongst the civilians or people, amongst the tribes, amongst the spiritual community, amongst a lot of things. Because of what? People not realize, well, they do for some, because a lot of them are power driven and so forth. They have allowed certain things to consume them, and through this is why a lot of people are going to fall from grace, because they've assumed that they could not be dethroned and so forth. So a lot of what, through the individualism of, or through just ancestral connection and healing and so forth, that's happening on a deeper level. This is we're literally rebuilding the security in the most authentic, uncomfortable way. That's why I tell you about stitches. Like, that shit uncomfortable when you got it somewhere, positioned somewhere, and it's itching. You can't pull it out too soon because it'll open it back up. It don't heal, and this has what I've learned to be the issue at hand, even with America. America, demographically, in a lot of places, has to go through that stitching process. This is divine intervention right now. When you see what has happened to our children, our mothers, and so much being exposed, is because that exposure in itself is allowing us to face ourselves. And then when we do that, then everything else begins to expire. The old version of you that supported that system, the old version of you where you realize a lot of this shit happened is divine intervention. And people are realizing you go from stop trying to trust shit externally to trusting your own intuition and discernment. America has to go through stitching. And it won't. This time around, this lifetime, it ain't going to just be through darker people or other people. You're going to see people, because it's deeper than skin color, kinfolk. Listen, it's deeper than that. This is on a spiritual frequency. This is on a vibrational level where you're going to have people where they're going to stitch shit up. Things have to be stitched up. And then you're asking me, I had to tell my party, you're asking me to just immediately trust people that look like you immediately after seeing what's happening. And that's unfortunate for a lot of people. But you got to realize generationally, even with having kids, people say interracial, do y'all not realize there are different emotions that come with a person that is darker than a person that, I don't know all the details of what her ancestors went through, but I'm just not going to assume that, a lot of us want to say, oh, that person, ancestor did this to me. Man, I keep telling y'all left out so much. Even these folks are realizing, people are a lot of shade, realizing how bamboozled and mentally enslaved they've been to even believing that they've had, from my perception, feeling like, and I'm not gonna say he had like an advantage, but I also see the disadvantage. Cause I see it from a spiritual aspect, and I also see the advantage. Like, oh yeah, they can look, yes, advantage of seeing them progress, but doing it in a way to where it's disempowering people. That's what we're missing. They did it in a way where it's disempowering others, and that only gonna backfire. So you're gonna have people who do things completely different, and then that healing, you're stitching up things not only individually but collectively. When you stitch something, that means the wound is like this. When you stitch it, that shit has no choice but to come together. That means people are going to come from all nations, tribes, and so forth. A lot of us are here to stitch shit up so people can see a different perspective. Some people don't even see the collective wound. They don't even see. In order for you to be able to experience the divine mother, divine father archetype or experience, or you have to see the wound. That's why a lot of people now, they go on with life, but deep down they don't even have a reliable source, truthfully, to why it is they're doing what they're doing, or a reliable source towards why basically that's going to expire. Like the powers that ain't or used to be, y'all gonna realize like that shit has an expiration date. This is divine intervention right now, and nothing can stop that shit. It's divine intervention. Everything, like, it's beautiful. I didn't even think I was going to go on this long, but yeah, divine intervention. And the beauty of it all is, again, a lot of us, as in facing these things in our lineage and so forth, we're stitching shit up. We're telling our family, whomever it is, like, this shit ain't going on no more, not in this lifetime or the next, and so forth. So be it. It is done. We're stitching shit up. Once y'all start seeing shit deeper, you'll realize like a lot of them fucking behavior patterns, a lot of the people who've been in power, they are not bigger than the fucking program. None of these people, I don't care what type of status that they have. I don't care who they are and so forth. Skin folk, they ain't kin folk. I don't seen it. I don't experience it. And when you in alignment, you realize, man, folks will come along that don't even know you. It's alignment. It's in you. It ain't on you. And when I say that, you're going to start seeing certain leaders fall from grace because they still want to hold on to the old narrative. You're going to start seeing so many people, elders, transition because it's all a part of the bigger picture, the bigger program. Y'all honestly believe that folks here was not given their power or giving whatever it is to just for a new power to be on the rise? Like, man, I'll be sitting here laughing at these fucking folks, bro. And that's gonna come for everybody. There's gonna come a time, I've always said, like, that new power on the rise is that authenticity, that love, that genuineness. Come on, bro. That trust. Let's be real. There hasn't been trust amongst humanity. It ain't even just dealing with people of lighter shade. That's the root cause of, there haven't even been fucking trust in the family. You got people been backdooring people. You got people been bro, I had to be honest. That's why I had to cut my family, certain people off, because I told my mother specifically not to do something. I know some people can relate to this depending on where they grew up at. When you have your mother put shit in your name, use your information, you know, just kind of like funny, but at the same time, it ain't funny because the laugh at your trauma is crazy. But it's okay to get to that place to laugh, to be joyful, but not in a more, you know, where you don't need to face it. But I'm talking about like to try to tarnish, and that's like, that right there is like, people who try to attempt to block your destiny or to block or create more roadblocks or create more delays on your journey. You know, people who put shit in your name, people who try to gatekeep, man, that shit is done. I don't care who you are, a certain status. Divine justice and judgment is here. Y'all have had your opportunity. people who have tried to, that have all these material things and, whether money and so forth, and have done things to try to block certain people here that who will and shall reach the nations and reach people of, all the nations and speak to the nations and so forth. Man, y'all judgment finna be so harsh, bro. You've been given opportunities because you didn't want to move out of the way. Y'all don't realize how much people behind the scenes will try to orchestrate or try to play God, what y'all call a source, try to play the Most High. Like, that's the thing where people karma hit them. It's like, it hits them different. When you're trying to do something to your child young, when you're trying to put stuff in their name and don't realize the effects it has as they grow up, and you're setting them up as if we asked to be born into this, and we kind of, for some, we sign up for this. But also, those are the beautiful and divine intervention where it seems like, oh, you thought you were going to hinder this person? No, you're not. You can try, but all of it eventually backfires. No matter who you are. Anyone that came along, always remember that the message is going to be delivered, no matter if you like it or not. No matter who you are, the message is always going to be delivered. So it is what it is. So that's the thing where I had to realize, like, I had to let people know, even in the old version of yourself, even in stitching things up, that's a part of cutting people off. I had to stitch up the fact of, I'm done with this shit. I'm done with people thinking that. Not even just the people, just the energy that they represent, the energy that they're in. I'm done with your projections. I'm done with your inconsistency of wanting to support. You're enabling the dysfunction and shit like that. Let me stitch this shit up. Let me nip this in the bud. Let me go ahead and weed this out. So, y'all take care of yourself. Peace and blessings. Shalom.